let me introduce our next guest on the Inner Drive. I don't know where to start. YouTube sensation, New York Times bestseller. Without further ado, Jordan Matter. Jordan, thanks for joining us today.
Sure thing. Thanks for having me.
I mean, first of all, the invitation is prompted by my daughter. She watches the show. She loves the YouTube channel. And then, of course, I got interested. I said, all right, what is this all about? I look into it and see, and just can't wait to see what the next challenge brings. And I can't get over it. Take us through the evolution of where you started and how you got to now become a YouTube sensation with a 10-minute photo challenge.
Oh, sure. What's your daughter's name?
Her name is Gemma.
Gemma?
Yes.
Hi, Gemma. Thanks for introducing me to your dad. I've been a photographer for many years, so I started with portraits and headshots for actors, and that was like 15, 20 years ago. I started doing that, and at one point I was photographing a dancer for the Paul Taylor Dance Company, and I really found it fascinating to see his body move and to try and photograph it. I'd never done dance. And that night I was watching my son, who was 4, play with his toy bus. And I realized that he had this intensity for his fantasy world and an appreciation of the small moments of life that we lose as we get older. So what I realized was I could start creating photos with dancers to recreate the everyday. And in recreating the everyday, I could show people how magical and beautiful everyday life could be. And that was my impetus to start doing dance photography, was to show everyday life. And once I started doing that, it kind of built into this whole thing called Dancers Among Us, which I worked on for 2 years, and it became a New York Times bestselling book. And that was my intro into the dance world, was Dancers Among Us. And I worked on 2 more books, and the last book was called Born to Dance. And with that, I was shooting kids, primarily because it was about childhood. And a lot of these kids were very popular with kids like your daughter. A lot of them from dance moms or from a world dance, or So You Think You Could Dance. And I was putting them all in my book, and I started making videos about them as well. And I just decided to put them on YouTube because my creative partner, the guy that was making the videos, said, if we can get 10,000 subscribers on YouTube, then we could get access to their facilities in New York City for free once a month. I was like, that would be cool to have our own studio for free. How would we ever get 10,000 subscribers though? Like, who's going to subscribe to behind the scenes videos of photo shoots? But pretty soon on, I realized that if we added a timer to the video, it would make it a lot more exciting. So the initial impetus for the 10-minute challenge was actually a dancer named Anna McNulty. What I realized was I was getting so many good photos of her, like on the first take, every time, the first take, that how many shots could I get in 5 minutes? Like, let's just show. And the purpose of it was to show how good the dancers are in comparison to the photographer, because I was seeing photographers posting photos and taking credit, right? Like, look at how awesome I am. And I was like, you're not really that awesome. I'm not that awesome. The dancers are awesome, and we're photographing it, right? So let me show you in 5 minutes, if somebody's really good, it's easy. Dance photography is easy. That was the whole impetus. But people liked the video, so I decided, well, let me add twice as much time to make it a longer, more fun video, and I'll bring in Lily Kay from Dance Moms. And I did that, and that first video was very popular, and that's what kind of started the 10-minute photo challenge rolling.
Oh, it's amazing to hear where you started and where you are today, and millions of viewers later, millions of subscriptions later. I think you just recently, in the last couple of months, actually passed over, 700,000 views on, was it on Instagram?
Yeah, 750 million views on YouTube. That's what it is currently.
Unbelievable. Incredible. Now, the fascinating thing in leading up to the interview today and learning more about you is you didn't even start out as a photographer. It was in your genes. You started as a baseball player, went into acting, and then all of a sudden, thankful for taking a hike up a mountain in Maine, it dawned on you, literally and figuratively, hey, this might be a career thing.
Yeah, I was a baseball player in college. And that had been my whole life. And then when I graduated college, I was done with baseball. And I got into acting mainly for the thrill of it, because if you're a baseball player, you're used to adrenaline. And, the idea of being on stage seemed like adrenaline as well. So I started getting into that. And I did that for a while, but I always felt a little bit unsatisfied. Like I enjoyed the attention, but I wasn't passionate about it because I wasn't working on it all day or whatever, you know. I just felt like something was missing, but I didn't know what it was. So I got to the top of a mountain. My wife and I biked to the top of this mountain. And I looked out over the horizon. I wanted to take a photo of the horizon. I realized I didn't know how to do it. So on the way down the mountain, I thought it would be cool to take a photography course. And there was this moment I had it very specifically. I thought maybe that would be my path, but without knowing anything about it, other than my grandfather had been a photographer and I'd watched him in the darkroom a lot. And that left an impression on me, an impression about having a passion, right? So I immediately thought, there's a million photographers in New York City alone. Why in the world would I be one of the ones that would end up being successful at it? This is ridiculous. I shouldn't even try. And I think we all have those moments where we think of something that we could maybe do with our life or do, you know, something that could be exciting to us. And we find all the obstacles immediately why we shouldn't do it. It's like a second nature. And maybe you had that struggle with starting a podcast. Like I could do a podcast, like, oh, why? There's so many podcasts out there. Why would anybody listen to my podcast? But you did it anyway. And that is, I think everybody who succeeds in anything has that moment of doubt and they decide to look beyond the doubt and try it, even if they don't know if it will be successful. It's like my favorite quote is leap and the net will appear. And that's what I did. I decided to take a photography course, even though I didn't know anything. Yeah, I thought who knows what'll happen. I decided to do it anyway. And immediately when I took a black and white printing course, immediately when I saw the print come up in the developer, I thought, man, like this is a hallelujah moment. I had this rush of like this a feeling I'd never experienced before wash over me. Like this is something really incredible. I need to be doing this. But after I did it for a year or so and I was unsuccessful at it, I was trying photojournalism. You know, I carry my camera around. I take pictures of people in the street. Nobody cared. And I kind of thought, I'm going to give up because, you know, this is too hard. And then my wife got accepted to vet school and she moved to Canada. And it was at that moment I thought, you know, I could continue being an actor / waiter for the next 4 years, but she's going to come back. She's going to be a doctor. And who will I be in that 4 years? And the only thing I could remember that gave me excitement other than baseball and acting was photography. So I picked up the camera again, but I decided to do portraits this time. I was working with a bunch of actors. So I said, I'm going to do headshots. And immediately it took off. It was like, I just needed to find my path. And my path was people, photographing people and engaging with people. So that is how I started. It was realizing I was not a landscape photographer. I was not a photojournalist. I was a portrait photographer. And once I realized that, I found this niche of natural light portraits that nobody was doing at the time. And whenever you start doing something that nobody's doing, if you do it well, you kind of define that for yourself. And so I became pretty popular in that world quickly.
Yeah, it's amazing to see some of these photos and going through and checking out the books. I mean, you had Dancers Among Us and Born to Dance, and they've just been phenomenal hits. And some of the photographs in there are simply amazing and breathtaking. And the one quote, not to mention, that really hit home for me is the leap and the net will appear, but also thinking about sacrificing perfection for just being good. And with a photographer and the lens and everything like that and the amount of your shots, I would imagine me being a layperson, I'd want to give up after a half dozen shoots of not getting the perfect shot. How do you balance getting the perfect shot for getting the shot that's, you know, right for that moment?
Well, that's a struggle because I don't like the idea of not getting it right. When I was doing Dancers Among Us, which was the first book, I was a successful portrait photographer, so that's where I was making my money. I have 2 kids, my wife, and I live outside of New York City. So I would drive into the city every day, and I would go and I would do the headshots and the portraits, and that would generate the money that I was contributing to the family, right? And my kids were young. Then I had to make a decision. Do I go down into the city or do I travel to another state to follow this dream of Dancers Among Us that's not generating any revenue at all? It's making nothing. While I have a successful portrait career that's generating a lot of money. And I would leave my studio. I would go down to do the dance photography and I would fail at it. I would not get good photos, and I knew it. And I didn't know how to make them good. I just knew that they weren't. And then I would come home and maybe my wife would say, oh, the kids already went to sleep. And, you know, your daughter really wanted to hear a story, but I read her one. Or, wow, your daughter took her first step and you missed it. I mean, she wouldn't say that. You know, that's how I heard it. It's like I had chosen to go do this thing that I didn't know if anybody would ever care about. Like nobody cared. Nobody was looking at it on social media, nothing. There was no book. And I kept failing at it, but I kept going back and trying it again anyway, because I felt in me that there was something here if I could just discover how to photograph it, even though I was missing all this stuff at home and it wasn't generating any revenue. But fortunately, I kept doing it. And in the doing it over and over, I discovered how to do it. And then once I discovered how to do it, it started becoming more popular. And then I got a book publisher, and then it all snowballed from there. But it's that not giving up, even when you're failing thing, that I think is so hard for people. There's those two obstacles. The first obstacle is, should I do it at all? Right? And we already discussed that. And then if you decide to leap and do it, and then don't do it well, then the second obstacle is, do I continue doing it even though I feel like I'm failing at it? And if you can do those things, do it and then continue to do it, it's going to eventually be successful. But it's hard to remember when you're in the midst of it and you're just not doing it well, or you're learning. Same with photos. You know, a lot of times we're running against light issues or time issues and trying to, you know, what's helped me with that is the 10-minute challenge. One of the purposes of that video series is to say, as artists, we get in our way a lot because we think too much, you know? So if you only have 10 minutes and you're trying to get 15 photos, like most photographers, that is like anathema. They would cringe if they heard, wow, you got 15 photos in 10 minutes. You should get one photo in 2 days. You know, that's the way to do it. And yet what I've found is if you let go and you just start chasing, suddenly your instincts take over and you see something over there and you start running for it. And you don't even realize what you're running for. And then you get there and you realize there's a photo, right? That kind of letting your instincts take over thing and not worrying about being perfect, but instead just getting the image that you're going to get and then going on to the next thing has kind of helped me release that control, which is what your initial question was 10 minutes ago.
No, that's great. No, it's perfect insight into that creative mind and the process. And something that you always bring up in a lot of the interviews you've done in the past is the spontaneity and letting go and something will take, you got to let go of the control all the time. And spontaneity is going to produce, I think you said, you know, the universe will repay you.
What I believe since I was young, for some reason, this phrase got stuck in my head, which is, if you really know what you want, the universe will conspire to give it to you. And I still believe that. It's just about the hours. I mean, I just can't tell you how many people I know who are very, very talented, and yet they put their own arbitrary obstacles in the way, and they just don't go do the thing that they could do to find their success that they hope for themselves, either artistic success, financial success, notoriety, some sort of success. But you got to leap, and people don't leap. And I think that's the whole game right there. No,
you hit the nail on the head there. I think that's true. I mean, both in my personal life, your life especially, if you don't take that leap, you're stuck in this never-ending pattern of impassionate type of work. And, you know, what kind of production comes forth from that tree. And it's amazing to see. And now, you know, from my perspective on the outside looking in, I would think a global pandemic would slow most down. I'm wondering how the global pandemic has slowed you down, if any, for the last couple of months.
It has not slowed me down. It's just altered what my focus has been. Obviously, I can't be out there shooting, or I haven't been able to be out there shooting without certain, you know, like awareness of social distancing and masks and all that. So we've adjusted it, and I've kind of tried to turn it into a positive. And I think that you can always see the negative or the positive in anything. So for me, the positive was, all right, I can't go to people, but Zoom has become a thing. So suddenly I can collaborate with people and bring them together in a video that I couldn't have otherwise, because one of them's Canada, the other one's in North Carolina. But suddenly I've got Lily and Anna in a video. I've never done a video with them together because they've never been in the same city with me. right? So it's given me an opportunity. I'm releasing a video tomorrow with Nia Sue and Sophie Dossi. This is a collaboration I've been wanting to do for years. They're best friends. They're both very popular. And yet we've never all been in the same city together. And so finally, because Zoom is accepted as a medium now to present videos, I can do a collaboration with them. And that's a lot of fun. And for the first time then in 2 months now or more, I got back into New York City the other day. And I did one of my classic kind of like circus performers around New York. And it felt so good to actually be taking photos, rather than being on Zoom and saying to somebody else, take the photo, like that I could go back to doing it. But we're wearing masks and we're social distancing and all that. So there's an awareness, but it all feeds the art. It just, a lot of times I feel like when something happens and redirects your path, it's an opportunity to see things in a new way you wouldn't have otherwise. It happens all the time in photo shoots. When I have an idea, we're going to go to this location and we're going to do an awesome photo there, and that's the plan. And then we get to the location, it's closed down, and I always feel there's a reason for this. I'll bet you there's another photo that's better close by. We just didn't know it. And almost invariably, we find that better photo.
Yeah, it's taking those obstacles and like you said, finding that silver lining and turning it into a positive. And one of the things that you've done recently too, talk about taking a silver lining and creating a positive out of an unsettling situation, is you turned over your platform, your social media platforms for the Black Lives Matter movement. And so, you're not just another photographer taking portraits. Talk to us what went into the thought process and, how that turned out, how the success was of turning over your social media platform to the BLM movement.
Well, I think many of us felt that we had to address it or acknowledge it in some way. It's just too big and too important to just keep, for me at least, to continue on with an entertaining, silly video of photo shoot when people are in the streets all over the world protesting something. So I wanted to acknowledge it. I also want to acknowledge my inability to really talk on this subject as a white guy. And as many, Black friends and Black artists I've worked with, all that's irrelevant. I get in my car and I'm not worried about getting pulled over, right? So I didn't know how to talk on it myself. And rather than bring a bunch of Black dancers into a video and use them as props, I really just decided what I want to do is, and I worked with my creative partner, Sandy Chase. He and I make the videos together, and we talked a lot about it. We said, we're going to turn the platform over and use the opportunity that we have to get in front of a bunch of people and give that video to artists who nobody knows, so that we can hear their voices instead of my own voices. So I did an intro where I said, I'm gonna get out of the way here. And then we selected a rapper, another dance photographer, a dancer, a poet, a vlogger, all of these different people, and just put together a video. And they all spoke to the movement much deeper than I could have ever imagined to do. So it's one of the videos I'm most proud of, even though I'm not in it.
Right, exactly. No, it turned out great. It's an awesome way of giving back and opening a lot of America's eyes to what's going out there and the artists that maybe they're unaware of. Another movement that you're very much a part of, and certainly I think from your personal experience, is the anti-bullying. And I think that's one of the first videos that I saw with my daughter, was you allowing this girl that had been bullied, putting her out there in front of the camera to tell her story and show, artists come in all different sizes, shapes, colors, whatever. And I think that was another one that really struck a chord with me.
Yeah, me too. I was, as a kid, I was bullied a lot. And so that whole thing resonates with me. When I was in 6th grade, I remember we take the bus every day from school to home. And my experience on the bus was I had long hair, and kids would sit behind me in the bus and they would tie my hair in knots. And then I would sit there pretending it wasn't happening and holding back tears. And everybody on the bus was laughing. I would get off the bus and they would all spit on me as the bus drove away. That was like my daily experience, right? So any sort of struggle with young people resonates with me, whether or not it's bullying or losing a parent or being sick themselves or, anything like that. And this young woman, Lizzie, the one that was bullied. I mean, her story is so inspiring to me. And once again, it's just about showcasing. We try to do this as much as we can on the channel, showcasing other people's struggles, because so many people are going through it and not many people are talking about it. You know, where you sit in the cafeteria at lunch is a big deal, but how many videos are really addressing that topic?
Your inspiration for all of your work, or for at least a couple of the books, actually come from your own kids. And it's amazing for me to what blooms from watching your son play with his toys to, one best-selling book to another best-selling book. How does your kids inspire you today beyond those books to inspire future projects?
That's a great question. It's a really good question. I've done 4 books. And I thought of each one of them as lessons to my kids, even though it's not laid out that way. But that if you stack them up and you look through them as you're going through your young adulthood, there are life lessons in there that I really hope that they take to heart. So in terms of moving forward, any project that I work on or any video that I work on has that element in it, that idea that it's for entertainment, but there's also a greater purpose to this. A lot of it has to do with these 3 steps of life that I often talk to my kids about. And I can boil it all down to 3 for you so that you can digest it and think about it. Find something you're passionate about, work harder at it than anyone else, and don't give up. Like if you do those 3 things, you're going to be gold in your personal life and your professional life. And so all the projects that I work on tend to emphasize those elements. Either within the creating of it, or in the grander scheme of the entire presence that I have and the work that I try and put out there.
No, it definitely comes across. You can totally see it in the work that you do. And it's a perfect segue talking about inspiration and kids. Gemma, who I introduced to you in the very beginning, is actually here. Would you mind taking a couple of questions from her?
Of course. I mean, I don't mind. Of course not.
All right, then I'll introduce our special guest here, Gemma, my daughter, the reason why I'm interviewing Jordan Matter right now. Gemma.
Hey, Gemma. How you doing?
Hi.
Hi. Good to see you.
You too.
All right, Gemma, the floor is yours.
What are your favorite photos you took?
Wow, that's a great question. And it's a really hard one because I've taken like a million photos. It's
like having kids, trying to choose just one kid as your favorite.
Right. A couple of my favorite photos. I think that probably my favorite photo I've ever taken is actually the cover of my book, Dancers Among Us. Hold on. Okay, can you see that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But the reason is not only because I love the photo, but because that photo is what kind of made me or made my career happen, because that photo went viral. It was the first photo I'd ever had that went viral. And as a result, I started getting more opportunities. I got a book agent, which turned into a publisher, which turned into the book itself. And it was all because I took that photo. Plus the photo itself, I think, she's just a beautiful dancer, and there's the drama of the rain. I love red. So I got to go with that one if I had to pick one. And then anything I take of my kids.
Very good.
What was your first YouTube video?
Well, my first YouTube video was unintentionally something about headshots, but the first YouTube video where I said, I'm going to post on YouTube was with Nia Sue. It was a 50-second video, and it's called Nia Sue Takes a Big Risk. And the reason, what happened was, as I told your dad earlier, my creative partner and I decided to start putting videos on YouTube. And the next day I was going to photograph Nia. And I just sent him a text. I said, if you want to do YouTube videos, let's do one with Nia right now. I'm going to photograph her for a movie she's going to be in. Let's see if we can get a video out of it. And that video went viral because it was with Nia. And I think that's when people started knowing who I was. Like, who's this crazy dude making Nia run in the middle of the street and do a hinge? Like, what else has he done? And then I suddenly said, oh, I got to do more videos because people like this one. So I started making a lot based on that one. So I think that was a big moment for me working with her.
Nice.
What made you want to be a photographer?
Well, we talked about that a bit already, but I was raised by visual artists. My grandfather was a photographer, and he didn't talk a lot. He was Swiss, so the only way I could really communicate with him was watching him work. So I would hang out in his darkroom, and I just watch him work in the darkroom all day, and it seemed like such a cool place to be that when I got older, I remembered that, and I decided I wanted to try it too.
Awesome. Anything else you want to ask him? You don't want to ask him how many Starbucks coffees he had during that one 24-hour challenge? I want to know that answer.
I had 3 because I realized that at a certain point, it gets gross. I never knew that coffee could get gross. And then I started needing water. And that whole 24-hour challenge thing was crazy because there is a 24-hour challenge trend on YouTube. And I'll tell you a little secret. Most of the time, they don't do it for 24 hours. They film for a few hours and then they call it 24 hours, right? To do something for 24 hours, anything, is so hard on the body. And after we were done with that, we went to lunch and I literally fell asleep. Like I was like at lunch because I just couldn't do it anymore. It was so intense, but it was exciting. And we were supposed to do another one with Sophie Dossi this May in London. It was going to be epic. And then something happened called a pandemic. This little thing that shut down the whole world. But we do hope to do it again. I don't know why I would do it again. Glutton for punishment. I said we should try 48 hours. That would be crazy, right? 48 hours.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Everybody does 24 now. What about 48? I don't think I'd make it, but it's worth trying.
Got to keep upping the ante. And actually, Sophie's going to be on our show tomorrow. And again, thanks to Gemma here, we get to interview some of these awesome people. So,
Gemma, you're killing it, and then you get to meet all these people, right?
Yeah. So it's awesome to kind of. She's inspired me to get back into this and to talk to interesting people. And I'm so glad we got to cross paths with you. You have one more? Yeah. Absolutely, go for it.
Who do you love to work with during your photography? Like, who do you like to take photos of?
Like, who are my favorite people to photograph?
Yeah.
Well, I'll say that's hard to say a specific person because I work with really great people and I don't want to single anyone out. The kind of people I like to work with are people who really like to take risks and have a lot of joy. So my favorite videos are the ones where, I've done videos with this crew called the Grav Gang, and they leap off of piers and stuff. Like, that's crazy to me. Or this woman, Stephanie Millinger, who can climb to the top of a pole and hang off of it. And whenever my heart is beating, I love it. Sophie Dossi is another great example because she's so good at what she does. She's like the best on the planet at it. And she's got so much personality that the combination of those two things is a lot of fun. Nia also is just she's such a good spirit, and I love her as a person so much. So I've gotten a chance to work with people who are just fun to be around, but also make my heart go like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And that's what drives my creative energy.
Awesome. Anything else from you? No? All right, Jordan. Well, what's on the horizon? What do you got coming up? I know you said a lot of the plans got squashed because of the pandemic. What's coming up for you? Where can we? Yeah,
if you had asked me that question 2 months ago, I would have said, all right, I'm going to Australia, Israel, Turkey, and Europe in the next few months, which was all true. That all got canceled, except for the trip to Turkey. I think I'm going there for an exhibition and some shooting, but I'm really at this place where, a lot has changed, right? It's been almost 3 months of straight time at home all the time. And that's been really amazing, to be honest, to be with my family all the time. So I'm thinking how much travel do I want to do? And I had a series that was going to come out on Dance Network that got canceled because of this. So we're really in a transitional period. I know we're going to put out weekly videos, but what beyond that is what I'm trying to figure out.
Awesome. Well, you certainly will have two sets of eyes watching your next steps. We really appreciate your time for being here with us. I know you got a busy schedule despite the pandemic, so thanks for coming on. We're big fans, and we look forward to catching up with you down the road.
Awesome. Thanks again for having me. Say hi to Sophie for me.
Will do. Thanks again.
All right, take care. Alrighty.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.